be here. We have a packed lineup for both tonight and this week. Make sure you sign up for Leland. Erica's dropped the link in the chat. You can use this QR code as well. We're going to be sending in a bunch of free resources and other things, and we do events like this all the time. So just want to make sure that everyone stays in the loop if you have not signed up for Leland already. So this is the first session in Consulting Week 2023, first of 15 sessions. We're going to be covering a bunch of different stuff tonight as kind of like a high-level overview, but then we're going to go deep into certain topics and different firms throughout the week. So make sure you sign up for each individual event that you want to attend, so you get the Zoom link. We didn't add all of you to every event because we know you're busy, but we definitely encourage you to attend live, because they're going to be coaches are going to be giving out free coaching and free resources at the specific events. So make sure you sign up for as many as you possibly can. We're going to be sending out some of these sample resources later in the week and just throughout the week and next week. So just make sure you are all signed up and ready to go, so you don't miss anything. We're really excited to share all this. This is the lineup. Erica just dropped in the link in the chat to be able to sign up for each of these sessions. Again, you have to sign up for each of them individually if you want to get the Zoom for them. So make sure you do that, because they will all come with their own resources, recordings, and other things, so we don't spam you with everything. But each of them has been kind of handcrafted. They're all free, which is just amazing. Really excited to have all of our coaches here tonight and throughout the week be putting together these amazing events for you. So make sure you attend. And then just in terms of logistics, we got a big crew tonight. We're getting closer to 400 people, which is amazing. But also we're going to try to man the chat as best we can. If we don't get to your question, you can ping us afterwards. You can also reach out to each of the coaches on this panel to work with them individually as a coach, which many of you already are, but I know some of you are still kind of finding your right coach. So hopefully you can do that. Be supportive and respectful. We're already getting a lot of love in the chat, which is great. Keep doing that. This is a stressful and exciting process for everyone, and it's best to be respectful and supportive. And then, yeah, make sure you sign up if you haven't already. I've mentioned that. This is the agenda we got tonight. I'm going to do a quick intro and just overview of Leland, try to be brief. Most of the meat is going to be in consulting overview and the consulting panel, which is going to be led by Sam, and we have 3 amazing panelists. And we will just keep rolling. My name is John. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Leland. I did not do consulting, sorry, but I did work at Uber and LinkedIn and tech. And then I have met some of these amazing panelists with some of the work we do on the MBA side. I'm here to help as much as I can, but these panelists will be answering all of your questions. You'll also see Erica, who organized this entire week for you, Josh and Amelia. Big thanks to them for making this possible. They're Leland team members that you will see often, and they're going to be emailing you a bunch this week. And now I'm going to kick it over to our panelists to do quick introductions. We'll just kind of go down the line here. Sam, why don't you take it away first?
Absolutely. Thanks, John. My name is Sam Anderson. I formerly worked with Bain & Company, spent about 5 years working out of their Texas system. I graduated from Brigham Young University with my undergrad and now live in Salt Lake City. Since leaving Bain, I've spent some time in venture capital, did a few years with an Indian-based venture capital firm, as well as in tech strategy. So I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Strategy for a SaaS company called Spiff, and previously was the Director of Strategy at a SaaS company called Pluralsight.
Emily, we'll kick it over to you.
Perfect. Nice to meet everybody here. My name is Emily. I left McKinsey maybe about 2 months ago, so just fresh out of the consulting boat. But I was there for about 2 years as a business analyst between our Chicago and our New York offices. I graduated at the University of Chicago, went straight there after undergrad. I was within our marketing and sales practice, but I was also one of our interviewers, especially within the case interview world. And I was also one of our recruiting leads coming from the undergraduate perspective. And currently I work in a fintech company out here in New York City. So I hope we see some representation here in Manhattan. Pass it over to Mario next.
Hi all, I'm similar to Sam and Emily. I am a former Bainey and left about 2 months ago. I was at Bain's New York office for 6 years, 2 years of which included an educational leave of absence at Stanford, where I was John's classmate. While at Bain, I specialized in private equity and education type work, and was a lead on our undergraduate recruiting team, as well as a lead for our LAPA, Latinos at Bain, diversity recruiting process.
Alrighty, I'm Sushmitha. I was a chemical engineer prior to doing my MBA at MIT Sloan, and that's what brought me to BCG. I interned at the Houston office doing a climate strategy, very passionate about climate, so that's kind of what brought me to BCG. And then once I graduated Sloan, I worked at a seed stage startup to try out the entrepreneurial route right before I started back at full-time at BCG. Now I'm in the Boston office working on ops transformation. While I was at Sloan, I case prepped a lot of people for going to MBB, and then as well continued my journey on Leland as well. So excited to talk to all of you.
Amazing. Look at this rock star powerhouse lineup we got tonight. Excited to hear from all of you. We also want to hear from you on the other line there. There's a lot of you, but if you could drop in the chat, where are you dialing in from? And where you're working or studying, if you don't mind sharing. It's always fun to see where we got representation. And I know we have a lot of people that are in undergrad trying to prepare to land consulting offers, and we have other career pivoters later in their career trying to make the jump. Geez, I can barely keep up. All right, we got Toronto, we got India, Dublin, Dubai, Vancouver, Italy. It's probably my front runner favorite so far. We got Mexico, Pakistan. Amazing. Wow. You guys are all dialing in the middle of the night too. This is great. Brasilia, Brazil. That's I used to live there. Love the Brazilian flags. Amazing. All right. This is great. Thanks for dropping those in. So just as a quick overview of Leland, so you know who we are and why we do this, I'm going to make this brief, but I want to make sure it's clear. So we're building a platform to be the one-stop shop to help you reach your career and educational goals. So that includes free events like this. It also includes working with one-on-one coaches like the coaches you have on this panel. You can join group classes, which we actually have a bunch of group classes coming up in the next couple of weeks. And then recently, actually this last week and officially today, we're announcing Leland Plus, which is a subscription content offering where you can access videos, example resumes, example cover letters, templates, and other things to help you break into consulting. Many of our coaches and more coaches to come are going to be contributing content to this library. And you can browse a bunch of different stuff. We've curated kind of a full-on list of how to land the interview, how to nail case interviews, how to nail behavioral interviews, sample interviews, so you can see partner level cases in addition to first round cases. This is like a wealth of resources, and it's only going to get better because we're adding to this library every week. And so the subscription gives you access to the full library. You can also explore other tracks, like we have an MBA track, and we're adding like a private equity and a venture capital track. So this all comes with this one subscription, and definitely encourage you to check it out. And this week we're doing a big discount on it because it's our launch week. So if you want to access the Leland Plus, I would encourage you to sign up this week because you get a big discount during just this week, and then it'll be over by the end of consulting week. Erica dropped it in the chat, but definitely encourage you to check that out in addition to finding coaches to work with. So I think most important I want to kind of highlight here is that we have all these things that we do, but most important are the people. It's you that are going after these really ambitious and kind of scary and exciting goals in your life. Leland's a platform that can help you with all of that. So we help people apply to anything from MBA programs to medical school to consulting to banking and many others, and thousands and thousands of people have reached their goals. Consulting is probably our largest career category, so it's definitely our bread and butter. But we do a bunch of other coaching and definitely encourage you to find someone that can help you. Don't go at this process alone. Things like Leland Plus will help, and these events will help you get perspective and learn, but that coaching relationship could be life-changing. So definitely encourage you to find that coach. Great. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to you, Sam. Maybe I'll let you share. It might be easier for you to control. I'll stop sharing here.
I can do that. Okay, let's see. We were practicing this beforehand and I think I screwed it up. So
Smooth.
hopefully it's working now. Excellent. Well, thank you, John. And thanks to the whole Leland team for putting this together. This is the first event of Consulting Week here at Leland. So I'm excited for all the other events they have planned and hope that you guys are all going to be joining them. I will somewhat pitch my own event later in the week. We're going to be doing a series of workshops. I'll be leading one specifically on market sizing, but that's part of a slew of other workshops that will hopefully be helpful as you think about, prepare for, and feel comfortable in the consulting interview process. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about this career path that is consulting. I'll give a brief overview of what consulting really is. For some of you, this might seem like common knowledge, but for others, I think there are real questions about what the day in the life of a consultant at a dedicated consulting firm, particularly those in the strategy space, really looks like. So we'll go through those together. And then I've got a series of questions here in the slides that we've prepared that we'll ask our panelists, but you can also feel free to drop some questions in the chat and we'll select from those as well and team up to the different panelists that have introduced themselves. So let's see if I got this right and we can get this started. So what does a consultant do? Honestly, it's a great question. And sometimes I think consultants ask themselves this question, but really at the heart of the matter, consultants are like really expensive brains for hire. So these firms have gone out and they've consolidated a group of really intelligent, curious, hardworking, trained individuals to help them solve their biggest problems. They then go and they work for different companies for project-based time periods, whether that's 3 to 6 weeks or even as long as a year or more, helping them solve problems, implement change, and drive success for their business. There are lots of different firms, and following this session is going to be a meet the firm session. Well, they'll give you a rundown on who these companies are, these consulting firms. But you'll notice that a lot of us come from the same three. The three big consulting shops, McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, really do dominate this strategy consulting layer that are these high-end projects. They're very expensive firms to hire, but in exchange, they deliver some pretty outstanding results for some companies that you've all heard of. Now, most of us can't talk specifically about our clients, but these are certainly logos that you interact with on a regular basis as customers or that you see out in the world. Now, what types of problems are we talking about? It could be anything from M&A, should I buy this business or help me integrate a business I just bought? Maybe it's a growth problem. I've noticed that my profits have been slipping or a new competitor seems to be taking away my share. How do I solve this problem? Maybe it's an org implementation or design issue. Like, hey, I need to restructure something inside of my business to clear a roadblock or promote success. All of these are things that these consulting firms help solve. So what does that mean for you? Well, as a consultant or as a new entrant in this firm, it's a lot of time brainstorming with the team, proposing different solutions, finding and analyzing data, using tools like Excel or Power BI or Alteryx to go out and help find solutions in the data, and then communicating those solutions via PowerPoint or sometimes documents and in meetings to help your clients implement the changes that are necessary to produce the success they want. Oftentimes, you're interviewing clients inside the firm to get expertise from them, applying it to best practices that the firm may have from other clients or from their years of experience in this field, and then helping tailor make those recommendations back to the client that you're working with, making sure that they understand exactly how they can implement that for success. So how do you become a candidate and how do you get involved here? Well, throughout the week, there are going to be sessions that help you think through this. But honestly, consulting firms are looking for the top tier students in all of your schools. So starting early and getting ready months in advance is going to be extremely helpful. Know the difference between the consulting firms that you're talking to and make sure you know where each one specializes so you can speak to each individually. Get to know these people and work extremely hard in school to make sure that your grades and your test scores are top tier. Then when it comes to the application, you've got Leland coaches and others that are more than happy to help you as you begin to prepare a recommendation, a resume, a cover letter, and then prepping ultimately for what is known as the case interview, which is somewhat unique to consulting and does require a significant amount of preparation. It's an interview process where you sit down and together with an interviewer, you break down a business problem and you help propose a recommendation, just like a consulting firm would do with a client, but in a very compressed 30-minute time period. Like I mentioned, the interview is unique to consulting, and it is not something that you should step into blind. So understanding exactly how to prepare for and then succeed in this interview environment will be critical. And we highly recommend that you get some help in that process. So there are plenty of Leland coaches that specialize specifically in this that can help you as you think through your preparation. So did I go backwards? Yeah, there we go. There's plenty of time for most of you to start your preparation, but it's really honestly never too early. Even as far as a year out, you can begin to think through the different firms, understand what might prepare a strong resume or a strong application package, and even begin to put down some of the basics for your case interview prep, whether that's some market sizing or brushing up on your mental math. Learning how to structure or speak in kind of the case vernacular is all helpful, and it's never too early to get started. As you get closer to the actual deadlines that these firms have, your prep can become much more specific, finalizing or polishing the details on a resume. For certain firms, writing a powerful cover letter that really articulates your story, and then finally putting the finishing touches on any case prep will all be helpful in the 1 to 2 months leading up to the application. So I'd like to invite you all to go into the chat and drop an answer to this question. What part of this process is the most intimidating or the most daunting for you? Those of you who know about consulting, who have thought about applying, where does the intimidation lie strongest? We'll go through and we can answer some of these. So let me pull up in my chat, and I might have the same problem that John did here. Getting the interview, networking with the right people. I'm seeing quite a few commenting about networking. Certainly that's an important part, and there's a session later in the week all about networking. So I would highly suggest you register. Just because it says networking, I'll just make a comment to say, while networking, of course, is a critical part, I think oftentimes when we say networking, we forget that really what it is it's building relationships or friendships with other people. As somebody who has helped hundreds of students as they've prepared for, applied for, moved through the interview process, and then interviewed myself, 100 and some odd students as they applied to work for Bain & Company. What I found was you can typically tell the students that are networking because it's a check the box activity that they feel they have to do, versus the students that are networking because they're genuinely curious about your experience, or they're interested in getting to know you, or they have a real sincere question where they need some help. When it becomes more than just I've got to do this, and it becomes a more relationship-oriented activity, it's significantly more successful. So there's my 1 minute networking tip. Okay, so let's move on and let's involve the panel here in answering some questions. So I'm going to start with very basic, why did you choose consulting? And we'll move through our panelists, but why don't we go ahead and start with Sushmitha. Sushmitha, you're with BCG right now, right? You're still with BCG? Okay.
I am.
So why consulting?
Yeah, no, great question. So I actually kind of fell into consulting like unaware, when I went into business school, I was like, I'm not going to do consulting. But then the more I met some of my friends and started to interact with some of my B school friends, I realized that consulting is kind of like a residency for business school. And there's so much opportunity, as well as a huge network that you can build within BCG and also with the clients. You're working with C-suite level people all the time. And what I really loved about BCG in particular and consulting in general was just the emphasis on learning and building your toolkit. So coming from an atypical background, well, I wouldn't say atypical, but come from an engineering background, which is very technical heavy and not so much on the business side. I really wanted to round out my skill set. I felt consulting was just a really good fit. Being able to try a whole bunch of different cases, figure out what my passion is, what I'm interested in, to be supported by a huge network of people and learning opportunities.
Cool. Yeah, I think when I think about consulting, the variety of experiences that are involved there, and just the fact that it feels constantly changing, I think is very appealing. I grew up with ADD, and consulting was just such a great way to see a lot of different things. So I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. Okay, Emily, why don't you tackle the same question? Why consulting?
Definitely. I think my answer is unfortunately not too different from what's already been said here. Like before I was in consulting, I was actually a designer. So I come from the art world previously. I was a creative myself. And so very much also not exactly your typical consulting background. And before that, I did spend a summer in Goldman and I decided like finance wasn't it for me. I needed something that was a little bit more creative, and being a designer was just like too far in the deep end because now I'm not doing anything strategic that I wanted to be doing. So for me, consulting was the perfect combination between creative problem solving while using very data backed and analytically driven problem solving. And exactly like Ort has already been mentioned here, a lot of people go into consulting because like frankly you're still figuring out what you want to do, and consulting is the perfect place where you can have the breadth of opportunities that other industries don't let you have. Like I'm currently working at a startup because I found out that's what I enjoy after having spent 2 years in consulting. So like I think so many people get fit into consulting. It's really difficult to put into one answer.
Got it. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I also think to your point, it allows you a lot of different exits. So once you did figure out, hey, I really like these small, tech startups, there were probably lots of opportunities for you to go and explore that niche and kind of take advantage of the interest that you discovered. Cool. Okay, Mario, we'll come to you. I'm going to stay on the same question. You're a bit of a unique case because you were at Bain prior to Stanford GSB, and then you liked it so much that even after an MBA, you decided to go back. So tell us why consulting.
Yeah, so I went to Wharton undergrad, and while there, the vast majority of people are attempting to enter either management consulting or investment banking. And so while I was there, I did an internship in each of those fields to kind of compare them apples to apples. In my experience in consulting and specifically at Bain, kind of blew the banking experience out of the water. I'd say on 3 key dimensions. One, as a management consultant, I was a much larger thought leader. I was tasked with answering unique questions for businesses, and I felt much less like a numbers guy, an Excel monkey, or anything like that. I had an integral role in creating the answer for the team. The second aspect was I love the ability to do many different projects throughout my career at Bain. The ability to change from looking at how a large legacy tech firm could restructure their call center business to how can New York public schools get more individuals into college and other higher ed systems. It's such a large range that you don't really see in any other industry. And I really had this craving, this appetite, and this enjoyment from getting up the learning curve quickly on new problems. And then the third aspect, and this is probably the reason why my NPS on consulting is so high, was the team aspect. The devoted skill set, the mentality of I have these 4 other ride or die people with me attacking this problem that the client, would not be able to solve without us. And we're gonna, try new things, get scrappy, and figure out how to get to a nuanced answer for the client was really awesome. And the culture across all consulting firms is very people first. And it's something that you just don't really see in other industries. And so those kind of aspects came together for me to really enjoy my time at Bain. I went to business school with kind of my head on the swivel of, is there something else out there that I might find more either fulfillment from, or I could have a larger impact? And I ended up ending at the spot of the ability to go back to Bain and kind of work on some of their more socially impact focused cases. You really hit that itch, and I love the people that are at Bain, and that's kind of what has drawn me to and kept me at consulting.
Very cool. As a Bainey myself, I can say a Bainey never lets another Bainey fail. So the idea of those ride or dies in the team room, it's something I certainly miss about working for Bain. Awesome answer. I don't know if any of you guys noticed, but just even the structure that Mario gave that answer with was very consulting-esque. 3 reasons, 1, 2, 3. I mean, well done, Mario. Well done. Okay. Next up is the next question. Here is, what do you do to figure out if this is the right career? How do you think through that as an undergrad? And I'll go to you, Sushmitha, here. When you're thinking about this, I mean, you went through this most recently of those on the panel, and you're debating consulting. How did you make that call, and how do you help others think through it?
Yeah, I think if you have a love for learning and you love challenging yourself, consulting is probably right for you. There's like no one bucket of people that that can go. I've coached a bunch of different people of various different backgrounds. So like you'd be shocked to see like, oh, like I have a passion for XYZ, and like that's why I want to go into consulting. Like you'll find every type of person. In fact, like I've coached some folks that have been trying to like choose between product management and, you know, do I go to a startup? Do I go to a tech role, or do I go into consulting? And like oftentimes I think it's a good fit if you're kind of like not sure and you want to try out a bunch of different things. And maybe you want to try out product management in a form where you're also working on strategy, because consulting isn't just strategy. Like right now I'm doing a transformation case. And so you can do ops work, you can do marketing role work, you can do transformations, and you can do like kind of product management work with digital, like digital teams. So I think that's what I would say.
Got it. You know, I did a lot of interviewing when I was at Bain of undergraduate candidates, in particular, looking for roles on the AC cohort, the associate consultant cohort. And I used to talk a lot about kind of this X factor that we would see in candidates, and it's kind of intangible, and you just kind of know when you see it. As the years have gone by, I think a lot of it really boils down to just that innate curiosity, that just desire to know the answer, not because you're particularly interested in like the exact subject matter, but just because you want to know, like the love of learning and figuring things out that otherwise have been hard. I think is something that's shared by a lot of people that are successful in this field. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, and this I'm coming to you, Emily. I know you lead you led a lot of work at McKinsey in the interviewing and the recruiting space. So when someone is preparing to be an excellent candidate for, you know, be it McKinsey or any of these firms, how should they prepare? And maybe draw a little bit from your own preparation. How did you prepare?
Definitely. And I love this question because I think, again, like I don't come from the traditional background. Like I didn't have any of those consulting experiences on my resume when I was applying. But I think what made me a standout candidate, and especially when I was looking at other candidates and resumes, what's really important isn't just the love for learning. Of course, that's the why you're even interested in consulting in the first place. But what made a great candidate was someone who was willing to put in the grit and the energy to pursue that love of learning. Because it's one thing to love something, it's another thing to actually chase after it and show that you have a passion for it. You're willing to not just put in the hours, but you're willing to be creative and figure out how to get there. And so a very tactile example was that I was a designer, but I wasn't a designer with an agency. I was a freelance designer. And by the time I graduated, I had started my own agency because of the volume of clients I had. And so that was something that helped me stand out, to show like, even though my experience isn't exactly aligned with consulting per se, I had that drive and I had that entrepreneurship ability to look for those answers. And I think when we look at candidates, that's something we also really want to see. Not that you just love, not just that you love to learn, but also that you're willing to chase after it as far as you need to keep on pursuing whatever your passion is. And so whether your passion is in the arts or English or physics, or it doesn't have to be in business, we just love the individuals who want to learn and know what it takes to learn well.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot. You know, I was somebody who I didn't prepare for a year to go into consulting. I thought I'd probably go into finance, but kind of at the last second dropped some resumes at consulting firms, and ended up landing an internship. Honestly, I think the fact that I was just preparing to be my best, regardless of what career I went into, there was a lot of kind of cross career success, so to speak, that helped me land it. So I think there's nothing consulting specific necessarily, as much as it is just be passionate about whatever it is you're doing and make sure you're doing your best job. The next two questions here deal with networking. The first is, how do you approach networking? And the second is, what do you talk about when you're networking? So Mario, as someone who's been networked with now for I don't know how many years at Bain & Company, on the other side, he said too many. He's on mute, but I saw what you mouthed there. What should people talk about? What is the right approach to networking? Give a little bit about your experience.
The right approach to networking is to come in with the desire of building relationships, not checking boxes. Now, the concept of networking is a box that you must check in the process by which you, apply. And the people that are within the either interview process or current employees understand that they're that you must network, but you have to do it in a way that is, relationship forward, which is very similar to our work with our clients, right? The clients knows that you are getting paid to be there, but you come, giving your best impression all the time and looking to foster meaningful connections with our clients to in turn drive meaningful work, right? And so what that means as you're building relationships with the individuals you're networking with is manifold. Let me talk about a couple of things. One, if you have a quality conversation with a rep from the company, follow up with them via email and reference the nuggets from that conversation that were unique to your conversation, right? If you say, it was so nice chatting with you, I hope we can stay in touch, best Mario, that's not going to cut it. But if you instead say, I really enjoyed hearing about your work on the cost transformation at that industrials company. What I enjoyed hearing about was how you learned X. Looking forward to staying in touch, Mario. That's going to be a much more compelling facet. So that one is the follow-up. The second is in those conversations, when you're kind of asking questions, I really encourage all of my coachees to do their homework before any networking sessions, to come prepared with questions. And these questions must be questions that cannot be answered via a quick Google search, right? If you are asking what are the clients that the Bain New York office serves most often, that is too table stakes to be asking. I would instead focus the questions on either the influence, experience, or impact of that individual on a certain case or on an area of interest for yourself as well. And so those are kind of the two things that are going to build relationships, which is that cornerstone of networking.
Excellent. I think that's great. Great answer. I remember when I was leading recruiting for one of Bain's core undergraduate schools out of their Texas office. And there was a student that I had never met before. And he was applying for all the firms, like most of them do. And we worked together throughout the process. He interviewed and we ended up giving him an offer to come work for Bain in Texas. But McKinsey also decided to give him an offer. And at the end of the day, Bain lost that battle and he went to work for McKinsey. Throughout that networking process, he and I actually became really good friends. Somehow the relationship somewhat broke out of the career networking box and into the, hey, we should just be personal friends box. And when he ended up applying for graduate school about a year later, we kept in touch enough that he actually asked if I would help work through his application with him and kind of guide him through his MBA application as well. He had rejected the offer that I gave him and went to Bain's kind of competitive firm, McKinsey, instead. Yet the friendship was strong enough that he continued to trust in that advice and in that relationship to help him. And I think networking really is relationship building. If it feels just like, hey, I'm asking the same questions to 6 people at this office in hopes that somebody will remember my name when resumes go around, you're probably not doing it right. It can be a little more relationship focused. Okay.
I also want to interject quickly. Make sure you're using the right nomenclature, right? So for that introductory role at Bain, that's called an associate consultant. At McKinsey, I believe that's called a business analyst. If you are mixing up the verbiage that you're using, that's an immediate red flag in employees' eyes that this person doesn't really care about this unique firm. So get the nomenclature correct.
Agreed. Okay. This slide is in here. So I think the Leland team wants me to show this. So get the help you need. You can scan this QR code. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. So the consulting interview is broken up into multiple parts. Some firms, it's much more structured. For example, McKinsey has a much more formal break between what would be considered a behavioral section or a case section. Whereas with Bain, it's a little more fluid, where they kind of flow more from one to the other. However, they're all going to ask behavioral, get to know you, figure out who you are type questions. So Sushmita, as the one who's probably done this interview the most recently of the people on the panel, how would you describe kind of the impression you wanted to leave at the end of that behavioral interview?
Yeah. So I feel like the whole case, the whole interview process is meant to show different aspects. And while the case interview, you're trying to do the structure, or you're doing pretty much like a real case in a short time. Like the behavioral is like your chance to show your personality. So when you're giving your behavioral answers, I always say like build a story and like know all the details about your story. Like, why did you think the way that you did? What was the impact that you have? And what about your creativity and like kind of like an insight for the interviewer to get into your mind and understand how you think, act, do, behave, build relationships, all of those things. The second piece would probably be like the skill sets. Obviously, like when you leave a behavioral interview, it's, you don't want to say a story and then have no like punchline at the end. So like connect your skill sets to like what the consulting skill sets are. And like, you can really do that even like no matter what experience that you've had, even if it's just project-based at school or like, you actually have like an internship or a job or something like that. There's always a skill set that you can apply that's related to a skill set that consulting has to offer. And this can range anything from problem solving to like soft skills like relationship building, conflict management, data analysis, things like that. And at the end of the day, I think my biggest thing with consulting is like we've already mentioned, this is the people aspect. So like have a conversation. It's not about you sharing just your side, but you want the interviewer to kind of be engaged as well. So it's your chance to leave your personality and impact at the end of that. So make it a conversation and kind of involve the interviewer in that process.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Mario, I'll come to you next. And then Emily, when Mario's done, the next question is about how each firm does the behavioral section differently. So I'd love to hear your perspective and a little overview of what is commonly known as the PEI at McKinsey. So Mario, take it away.
The ideal impression you want to leave the behavioral interview with is the airport test. If I am stuck at an airport on a flight delay, which is definitely going to happen in your consulting career, is this other person going to make that delay less miserable? And when I say less miserable, that has two components to it. Are they fun and personable and they're like, a good person to connect with? But then could they also be competent and focused if we are in a busy part of the case and we need to grind through some things? And so being able to pass that airport test is the impression you should be leaving with.
I love that. You really, there's the airport, but there's also just the team room, and those team rooms are not, big. They're often very small conference rooms designed for 4 people, but filled with 8. So you can't hate everybody on your team. That's for sure. Okay, Emily, I'd love to hear a little bit about how McKinsey's behavioral interview section is different. And what is the PEI?
Definitely. So we're a little bit infamous and notorious for the PEI, the McKinsey Behavioral, known as the personal experience interview. The way we do it here, so normally if you go to any other company, not even just consulting, when you get a behavioral question, it's normally something along the lines of, tell me about a time when you disagreed with the manager. And you might use like a star format or some other kind of format to bring structure to your answer, but you just close out your story at the end of your response. At McKinsey, we like to have the candidate begin with their response, but then we'll probably spend the next 20 minutes exploring that story. We're not going to go to any other story that you might have been able to bring up. We're not going to go through any other question. We're going to be targeting this one story and we're going to dive really, really deep into it. And at McKinsey, a lot of questions we get is like, why are you doing this? Or what's the point of it? And if you go onto the McKinsey website, we do very clearly lay out what are the 4 character traits that we're looking for with the PEI. Depending on the PEI question you get, which character trait is kind of being interviewed for at the point. And so we just want to make sure that you are able to hit whatever the character trait is that we're looking for with that question. And so I do tend to advise students that you're preparing for McKinsey, make sure that you already have a story ready for each of the character traits and that you're able to talk a very, very long time about that story. And it's not just rambling. It's going to be about being able to add more color to the story, such as why did your manager decide to respond this way? Like, whose other opinions did you also consider before you made that decision? Or like, okay, you didn't sound very happy with that response. Like, what did you do as a result to ameliorate the situation you had at hand? And so I think that's unique to McKinsey's experience. Personally, it worked very well with me. I'm somebody who loves to talk, so it was a great experience for me. But I know it's something that does require a bit of prep and a bit of a mindset change for the behaviorals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think McKinsey's structure often drives students to prepare quite well for the PEI because, as Emily said, it's often dreaded. But I think that just because Bain or BCG might not use as structured of an approach, it doesn't mean the behavioral section should be overlooked or not prepared for. Bain's, for example, still holds a lot of weight in the interview process, even if the questions are as simple as, hey, why do you want to work for Bain & Company? That might come across as a very simple question, but the range of answers that I received as an interviewer from students that were just kind of going along or going with the motions to those that have really obviously put personal thought into why Bain & Company would be a good fit for them, those were different. And it was noticeably different in a way that helped the prepared student. Now, it's not to say that same student didn't also have a great answer for why they'd love to work for BCG or why they'd love to work for McKinsey. But having a tailored answer that is well thought through, structured, and delivered concisely for each of the different firms that you're applying for will go a long way to differentiate you as a candidate. The behavioral section normally composes of about the first 15 minutes, 1/3, so to speak, of the interview time. But after that, we'll move into the case. So, Susmitha, why don't you go through a little bit again about your case prep? Talk to us about how you prepared and what you'd recommend, and potentially anything that you didn't do or that you would have changed if you could go backwards.
Yeah, I feel like with case prepping, there's like this huge like emphasis on like, you got to do 50 cases to prepare for the interview. And I got very overwhelmed. I was very overwhelmed. I was actually not just focusing on on consulting. I was focusing on also trying to get into product management and tech and a couple other things. And so like they have their own cases. And so I really needed to be mindful of my time. So I think what really helped me is I always tell my coach, like the people that I coach and like my mentees, like I'll say, focus on a few cases, but make them like really focus on the quality. So I say like, you probably don't even need to do more than 10 cases. This is my rule of thumb, like that, but you have to do it like fully. So like go back. And I realized this really late in the game when I was prepping, which is why I give this advice. But like, once you do a case, like go back, review every aspect of it. So this is like, why did I like stumble on this area? Why did I think that this was the right, like the trajectory of the case? How does this case compare to the last case that I did? And like, how could it be different? Like, what are other questions that they could have asked? Like, can I redo this brainstorm section again? So like really going nitpicky on the details of the case and like coming up with an error log. So the tips that I have is like, if you have an error log and you constantly say, okay, I'm always forgetting this. I'm always forgetting decimals, or I can't do percentages. Like you can really hone in on what you need to practice. Or if there's like a particular industry, you'll start to find trends and kind of like see, okay, where, like, how can I most effectively use my time? I have a bunch of other tips that I like to share, but for the interest of time, I'll pause here.
Excellent. I love that. I don't want to be overly stereotypical here, but I just watched this Netflix special called Quarterback, and it follows a few NFL quarterbacks through the last NFL season. And one of the things that was common across every quarterback they followed was that they all watched an incredible, potentially overwhelming amount of tape of themselves in previous games, going through what went wrong. I'm consistently surprised by the number of people that I coach that are more than willing to do 60, 70 cases in preparation for an interview, but spend no time going back over things that went wrong or redoing sections or just doing long division, exercises if that's what they messed up. I mean, those little fundamentals, I think, obviously are the building blocks of a great case, and just running the same thing over and over without any of those fixes creates bad habits. I have gotten some surprise from mentees or individuals I've coached when I say you really only need to do 10 or 15 cases in preparation for an interview, because I don't want you to form any bad habits and I don't want you to get overly routine in the way you deliver. But I do want you to spend lots of hours making sure you know how to multiply percentages, making sure you know how to divide fractions, making sure that you are never going to misplace a decimal when we're multiplying with large numbers. Those little exercises, I think, go a long way in making sure that the case comes together well. Emily, you've done a lot of interviewing yourself. So tell me, how should a candidate prepare for a case interview?
Very similarly, out of the interest of time, I won't give like the entire massive spiel I like to give about case interviewing. I mean, my own experience is not very inspirational. I didn't begin case interviewing until I found out I had a first round with Bain. So don't do that. Don't begin casing 2 weeks before you have an interview. But I think a lot of the tips I learned from that experience are very, very actionable and very applicable here. Like everything that's already been said, I think my biggest thing, if I had to go back and make adjustments to my case practice, is I would allow myself to be the interviewer a little bit more frequently than I had when I was casing. A lot of students, when they are prepping, they are always asking others to case them. They're always trying to, like, be on the side of the interviewee because that's obviously what you're preparing for. But I think it's super valuable to also sit as an interviewer and give the case to somebody else, because when you do the process yourself, when you go through the motions yourself, you start noticing thoughts you have about what you notice with the candidate. What are you paying attention? Like, what are you giving feedback on? And that's a really great way for you to keep in mind when you're performing in front of the interviewer. What can you do to improve your own performance? And so I always tell students, especially with cases that they've already done multiple times and they feel super comfortable with, still give it to somebody else, because you'll find just one other small area that even with like a very small minor adjustment, it could go a long way in your case performance. And so definitely sit on the other side of the table. Don't just keep being the one practicing the cases. Make sure you also go from the eyes of the interviewer.
I love that tip. I think that's awesome. When I was in school, interestingly, similarly to you, I didn't start preparing for my Bain interview until I had the invite. And I think what that says is the actual mechanisms of the case can be learned rather quickly. It's understanding the underpinning skills that they're actually trying to test that can take a long time to develop. Mental math, basic business judgment, data comprehension, communication skills, those things are the blocks that build a successful case interview. And so don't worry about, hey, am I moving through this routine enough times? But rather, have I strengthened each of those individual blocks sufficiently? Later this week, Erica will put in the chat when they're all happening, I'm sure. But we have a whole series of workshops about different components within the case, whether it's mental math, whether it's case communication, structuring. I'm doing one on market sizing. They're all coming. Those are the blocks that can be practiced independently, so that when you are running a full mock case interview, you're strong from tip to tail. Okay, Mario, the next question here is, what's most commonly overlooked? So is there anything that we have overlooked in the advice that we've given so far about how to prepare for case interviews?
I think what's most commonly overlooked is prepping too much for the case and not enough for the fit. So that's the one aspect. And then the second, which is a similar flavor, it's not bringing enough of your personality into the case. So whether that's being overly robotic because you're too rehearsed, or missing the small opportunities to inject yourself into the case. So for example, if I was being asked to size the market for milk chocolate, I might, drop a joke here or there, like, well, this is tough for me because I don't like chocolate at all, but I know my friend Reese, he loves chocolate and he eats about 3 candy bars a week. So let's say that he's a high volume consumer. Now, if we were to think about my friend Ashley, things like that, inject yourself and your personality into the case as much as possible, and do that in your prep too. So I think that's what's overlooked often.
Great. I completely agree. I think oftentimes one of the biggest downfalls for over prepping is that it becomes robotic and you just kind of lose yourself in the exercise of it. Yeah. Okay. We're starting to wrap this up. So I'm going to go through each of our panelists and just ask for final tips, whether it's the case portion of the interview or just final tips in getting into management consulting. Anything you want to share with our audience? We'll start with Sushmitha.
I think I'm just going to harp on the fact of having an error log and just being routine about your case prep. And if you need a coach to help guide you through that, definitely do that. And then you can kind of take the skills, it's almost like teaching you how to learn. And then once you've established that framework, kind of applying that and creating a group of people to work with if that works for you.
Very cool. Emily?
I think the number one thing I'm always telling students is that when it comes to landing an offer or really going through the interview, it's not just about getting the right answers. It's a lot about the presentation of your answers as well. I hate to say it, but a lot of consulting when your first 6 months is almost fake it till you make it kind of gig, because you're being paid the big bucks to give advice to a company that you were just introduced to. There's no way you know more about the company than the executives do. But you're hired because you seem confident, you seem smart, and you seem like you know what you're doing. And so when you're interviewing as well, like you don't need to have the best answers under the sun. You don't need to always get the content correct. Big part of it really is, do I feel confident putting you in front of a client on day one? You may have no idea what's going on in the room, but you can still act like you know what you're doing. And so definitely as you're practicing for the case interview or the fit interviews, make sure that you know what your content is, you like your content, but you also have structure to it. You also sound confident what you're doing, and your body language portrays all of it. So I think that'd be my tip. Like, don't over harp just on the content. Also think about your presentation.
Cool. And Mario, any final tips?
3 thoughts. Exude confidence, nail the basics, and be genuine in building relationships with all people you meet across the application process.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Mario. You know, I think my final tips as we wrap up this session would be to find joy in this process. You know, I find it really interesting that a lot of people really want these jobs. They're highly sought after positions. And they think for some reason that the hard part is, you know, in getting the job, like that's where the real work is. And then from there, like the paychecks start rolling in and you're flying first class and you're staying in nice hotels and the rest of life is easy. I have never worked more hours than I did at Bain & Company. You know, there were weeks where I went nights without sleep. There were, you know, hard meetings where nobody left feeling good about themselves. Nobody left feeling all that smart or self-assured. And that process of learning starts now. And so as you're preparing and you're thinking towards this high demand career, it's normal that it's a high demand process that gets you there. So I would prepare yourself to receive critical feedback that's tough to absorb, where somebody tells you something you might not want to hear. I would be prepared to feel like, hey, I'm not quite ready for this. I'm being pushed harder than I thought I would. And unfortunately, just because of the level of competition, it's unlikely that all you're going to hear is yes from every firm you apply to. So keeping your head up and being willing to push through some of those initial setbacks and casting a wide net, I think is most likely to lead to success at the end of the day. So there are plenty of coaches on Leland. I'm going to hand this over to John. I'm sure he'll tell you where to find them and how to hire them.
Well, the most important thing is go to the next slide. Can we just give some love for these panelists? What an awesome lineup. This is great. I learned a lot about consulting if I ever decide to go get into consulting. Probably won't.
Leland doesn't work out. Yeah. There's a good backup for you.
Just super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, give them some love in the chat. Make sure, by the way, a lot of these coaches have discounts if you join Leland Plus too. So Leland Plus comes with content that I mentioned, but also coaching discounts. So you can access those. Make sure you sign up. A lot of you have already started signing up for Leland Plus to access the discount for this week. Make sure you reach out to these coaches. We're going to send out their profiles so you can schedule intro calls with them. You can even see their calendar, their free intro calls, so you can see if it'd be a good fit to work together. And yeah, we're here to help you. We know this process is exciting. It's stressful. There's a lot of emotion involved. And we're here to help and want to make sure that we get you the resources that you need to be successful here. So make sure you sign up, go to these events, and yeah, we're here to help.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you at other events throughout the week.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again, panelists. You guys were awesome. It's great.